All right, so just to remind us of our purpose today, we are looking at an ADI lab and we are planning out how to best implement it in your class and incorporating Avid strategies wherever possible. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So will you give me an overview of what the lab is about?
Yes. Students are using a flame test lab to identify 6 knowns and get their emission spectrums. And then they're going to use that information to identify 4 unknowns.
Perfect. So stage one of the ADI process is reading the background information. Correct. Okay, so how are you planning on doing that in your class?
I have the students annotate.
Okay.
And it's a full page.
Okay. And what kind of annotations do they use?
Underlining. Let's see, underlining new words. Gosh. Circling. Oh, I've forgotten my annotations now. We underline something, we circle something,
Okay.
we put stars by stuff.
Okay, perfect. So that is really similar to what we use in Avid for marking the text. We generally use circling for new words and underlining for main ideas, but whatever annotations your class is used to absolutely will work. One other thing that you might want to challenge your students to do is just to number the paragraphs. That can be super helpful. Do you all discuss this passage afterwards?
We do.
So whenever you have them number the paragraphs, that can be really useful for them to refer to the different information. So instead of them trying to explain to the class where they underline something, they can say in paragraph 2, and that can direct everyone's focus really easily. Is this something you've ever done before?
In the past, yes, but I've forgotten about it.
Yeah, so that would be my suggestion there, is also having them number the paragraphs. And then how do you normally have them discuss it afterwards?
Lots of different ways. It depends on the class.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be teacher-led. Sometimes I'll have a group share out something, and then we'll kind of rotate group volunteers,
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Do you normally have pretty good volunteering percentages when you do it that way, or is it kind of a struggle to get students to talk?
I try to make it the volunteer thing until I see how that's going. And
Gotcha.
then it may become teacher-led.
Yes, I totally feel you there. Something I found that makes that a little bit easier too is I have them share with somebody at their table first, so that way they've all got something that they can say. And sometimes even instead of having them share, instead of having them share our what they wrote down, I tell them to share what somebody else wrote down. Sometimes they still share what they wrote down, but just that ability to say, well, she did this, so that way they don't feel like people are going to say, oh, well, why did you underline that? That wasn't a good thing to underline. It kind of puts that on somebody else, and so makes them feel a little bit less pressure. Maybe if you're having trouble getting volunteers, that might be something that helps too.
Cool.
Just an idea there.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That's good.
Perfect. How long do you think that part will take in your class?
Depending on the class, again, one class is a little bit higher than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Reading, annotating, talking, 10 minutes.
Okay. That's not bad. So that can kind of be the first part of the class period. And then is there anything else you do before you move to stage 2?
We do go over safety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How do you go over that?
By going over the compounds, and I have the SDS sheets available.
Oh, awesome.
And so we actually look at that, and the ones that say danger or hazard or something like that,
Mhm.
then we look at specifically what do we do just in case.
Oh, good. That's perfect. What kind of format do you use to go over that in your class?
Pretty much the same. It's just kind of
Okay.
redirecting it.
Okay, awesome. Do you all look at SDS sheets earlier in the year too?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you're kind of recalling on that prior knowledge. Awesome. That's really cool. And then after that, we move into stage 2?
Yes.
Okay. And stage 2 is writing a procedure?
Believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
So we write procedure. Tell me how that looks in your class.
Okay, so ADI has a no need to know.
Mm-hmm.
We always use that because they have they also have a getting started section, and so we kind of combine those two together. So they know what they have and what they have to find.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a template that they use that guides them through what are your 3 or 2 or 1 possibilities for hypothesis, and then what do you need to collect, and then what are you going to process, and then the blanks at the bottom for what they find.
Awesome. Does that template do a good job of leading the students through there?
Not as much as I would like.
Okay, gotcha. Do you have any other ways that you structured a little bit more that's been helpful, or is that something that we should address?
We probably should address it. I usually base whatever we're doing off of that.
Mhm.
But if
Mhm.
something would do it better, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, gotcha. So the problem is the template is a little bit too generic and we need some more structure to it.
Mhm.
Have you tried giving them any sort of sentence stems in this stage?
Not at this stage.
So I know whenever I've done ADI in the past, I use them later on doing like the report and
write-up,
things.
yeah.
But this might be a place too that we go ahead and start introducing sentence stems.
Okay.
That at least gives them a starting point, because that's what I found for my students is that they just stared at the blank piece of paper
Yeah.
and they did not know what to write at all.
Yes.
Do you think sentence stems would help them there?
They usually do with the write-up portion.
Would this be an appropriate place for it? Like, are there some sentence stems that we could fill in?
I think so.
Okay, awesome. So that might be one thing that helps, and they do this in groups, correct?
Mhm.
So, do you have a problem with students getting off task, and that's why they're completing it? I know that can be common.
No.
Never your students. One thing that I have tried is only allowing each student to fill in one part of it. Sometimes, I don't know why, it's still the same thing, but just adding more structure to the actual procedure of doing it for some reason helps them focus a little bit more. So I'll say, okay, one person can write down the information in the first box, and then you have to pass it to the next person, and you have to fill in the second box. And it's like that pressure of somebody else is going to be writing after me. Sometimes just helps them fill in that box a little bit faster.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll even have like I'll have some maybe color pencils or markers in the middle, and they each have to write in a different color, so I can see that each different person has done it, and they'll put whoever's color is whose.
Okay.
Something to try.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Are there any other ideas that you have for making that a little bit more structured?
No, I've tried mine.
Okay, so those are two things that we can try in this one, and then if they don't work, then we can think of some more for the next time you do an ADI lab.
Okay.
So then, once they have their procedures, we move on to stage 3,
Mhm.
which is data collection, and then analysis.
Mhm.
Right? Is anything going wrong there? Or you think that your kids are pretty strong in that part? I know you guys do lots of labs throughout the year.
We do. They're pretty strong unless they need a data table.
Okay. Do you have your students make their own data table?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay.
I'll give them some support, like you need this many columns, this many rows.
Okay.
But I don't tell them what goes where.
Ooh, I like that. That's a really good idea. Still keeping some of that inquiry in, but with some support too.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else you think you need for that stage, or you think that'll be okay?
I think that's okay.
Okay, stage 4, my favorite stage, argumentation. So tell me about how this looks in your class.
We normally do the boards where they have the CER.
Mhm.
It's difficult to get them to move beyond the board.
Okay,
They can get the claim down, they can get their evidence, they can get their justification or their reasoning,
okay,
and the justification, the evidence and the justification usually tend to be a little jumbled
okay,
or not quite enough detail
okay.
to support anything.
Mhm.
And they're very hesitant when we get to the actual argumentation part.
Okay. Do you find that they're more hesitant on the explaining side or on the asking questions side, or a little bit of
Both.
both? Okay.
Yeah, they're willing to walk around, but they're not willing to say a whole lot.
They want to just see them. Okay, so a couple things. Specifically with that one thing you can do, if you want to focus on strengthening one part of that before the other, it doesn't allow for the back and forth conversation, but it makes people a little bit more comfortable giving feedback, which could then help further sessions that you have.
Okay.
Is instead of having someone stay and present the board, you can give each group of some post-it notes, and they go around and they just look at the board. And so there's no one there from that group. They're just reading it and taking it at whatever face value is of what they have on the board. It really stresses that they have to put everything on the board because they're not going to be there to explain anything.
Okay.
And then they can leave their feedback on sticky notes. It can be anonymous. They don't have to put their name on it, but just either asking a question or telling them, hey, this is a really great thing I saw, or hey, this is one thing you can improve, and leaving that sticky note there. Sometimes it helps them just to kind of start the one-way conversation.
Mhm.
They're not going to get back and forth, which I know is the goal,
Right.
but it at least makes them feel a little bit more comfortable doing that.
And if they're comfortable with that, the next one we could do the both.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if they do that the first time, the next time you do an ADI lab, they already had that practice giving the feedback, and so then they might be a little bit more comfortable when somebody is there. Does that sound like something that would work?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we try that for this one. The format of doing it on the board, that's going okay though?
Mhm.
They work well with that. Okay, so maybe we don't try to do anything different
Yeah,
with that
give them
this
dry
time.
erase markers and they'll do anything.
I
say.
know, it's so funny. I like to give them two dry erase markers and I tell them what theme they are. Sometimes we have a Christmas group and we have a Halloween group and we have a North Carolina Tar Heels group and we have an Auburn group, whatever
Okay.
2 colors they end up with. It makes it really exciting. Fun day. Okay, stage 5. My other favorite one. So stage 5, I know, is a whole class debrief discussion. Tell me about how this looks in your class.
Well, now that I remember to do it each time.
That's the first step. Remember to do it.
I've made PowerPoint slide deck, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And usually I have background questions on it to kind of get them thinking again.
Mm-hmm.
And then all I put on it are questions. And it's a answer the question, talk about it. I try to incorporate some things from my on-ramps class that I've learned as far as conversation and debate. Here's an answer. Here's a question. Answer it by yourself. I'll group the students together that had the same answers. And then they talk again and try to come up with better proof. And then we try to argue with the other groups that are different answers. And the whole class has to come to consensus. And then we talk about, okay, was it the right answer?
Awesome.
So there's a little bit of that on the ones that are appropriate. This one I think would be a good one for that because of trying to figure out the identity of the unknowns.
Okay. How do your students do with that? Do they normally respond pretty well? Is there really rich conversation, or do they kind of shy away from that?
Haven't done it yet this year.
Okay.
But in past years, it's been really good.
Okay.
Because I put them with the people that have the same answer. They feel more
awesome.
comfortable giving their justification in that group.
Awesome.
Well, I found when I put them with different people and they have to argue individually, everybody's kind of quiet.
That's really cool. I really like that idea. Another thing that you could do here, if it is like for this lab where there's a right answer, and we're talking about do you agree or disagree with that answer, might be a spot for philosophical chairs, one of our avid strategies that we use.
Okay.
So kind of the same idea, just making it a little bit more structured. And that I would probably group them first and have them discuss with the same people. That way, you're right, they do feel a little bit more comfortable. But then setting up as philosophical chairs. And so it doesn't even feel like an ADI lab.
Right.
They're just having a debate. My students love to debate. And it's a very structured debate, but they have so much fun with it. And they, if you think it's this answer one side, you think it's this answer the other side, and you're welcome to change sides at any point if someone says something that sways you. That might be a way that you could do it there.
That'd be fun.
I think so too. I think it would be awesome.
Okay.
Another thing is for those questions that are more open-ended and don't have a correct answer is using a Socratic seminar. So in future labs, if you have questions that lend themselves more towards discussion as opposed to debate, you can always set them up in a Socratic seminar. And it's the same idea.
Yeah.
But for some reason, putting the desk in a circle and really having it student-led, they just seem a little bit more open to talking. I think it's still a great idea to have them, the ones that have the same justification, pairing up first to kind of gain that background information. And it might even be one that you have the pilot with the co-pilots, that form of Socratic seminar.
Okay.
So they've got their support people behind them that can give them that information so that they don't feel just kind of left out and exposed all by themselves.
Exactly.
Do you think that those might improve stage 5?
Yeah.
I know in my class it was a sometimes struggle to get people talking. They just are kind of looking around like, what? You want
Same
me to say
people
something?
always talking.
Yes. So that might be another way to facilitate that conversation. Is there anything else you can think of for that stage?
No, I'm gonna try that now.
It's gonna be so fun.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. And then stage 6 is writing the rough draft. How does that normally go with your students?
Pretty good. Like I said, I have the template with the sentence starters. It can be a little bit limiting for the ones that actually understand the lab, but for the ones that are struggling, it's very helpful.
Awesome. Okay. And then stage 7, I know, is peer editing. How does that go?
I've been using the Canvas peer editing.
Okay.
So it does get the paper circulated better. I still have issues, especially with my on-level class, of getting the paper completed in time for it to be available to be peer edited.
Gotcha. Okay. Do they do their rough draft during class?
Yes.
Which makes it even crazier. So something that I have tried that sometimes helps is instead of just giving them a class period to write the rough draft, is actually chunking it during the class period.
Okay.
Because I know we split it up into 3 sections, and instead of just giving them time, write your rough draft, and then kind of monitoring and say, okay, you have 10 minutes, you're writing your introduction. Setting that time limit for some reason.
Mhm.
For those that have trouble getting started, they see that deadline of 10 minutes and you can put a timer up on the board. It just sometimes helps them get a little bit more started. And then giving them maybe 15 minutes to do the next one, and then 15 minutes to do the last one. So at least they may not completely finish, which is okay,
Mhm.
but they should at least have something for each section at that
Right.
point, as opposed to the ones we get that have an introduction and nothing else, which is hard to evaluate when their peers are evaluating
So
them.
hard.
Yes. So that might be something in stage 6 that could help facilitate that a little bit better, that then leads to a better peer editing session.
That's a good idea.
Is there everything else about the peer editing is going okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Do your students give good feedback?
Fair.
Okay. Okay. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, they've got the feedback poster
Yeah.
back there.
Uh-huh.
And so they reference that.
Okay. Do they do it individually or in partners?
I do it as a group of 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like
Awesome.
their whole group gets one paper.
That's good. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I found whenever I stopped doing it individually, it worked a lot better.
Yeah.
It's individual. They didn't give very good
It's like, I
feedback
gotta
at all.
read the whole thing.
I know, right? They did not enjoy that. But yeah, that's good. You're doing it in a group. And then stage 8 is the final draft. How's that stage going for your classes?
If it gets written for the peer review, then they get it turned in, and
Mhm.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't get written for the peer review, I have a real hard time getting it from them.
Do you have a lot of students that just return in their rough draft?
Yes.
Something that I tried that might help or not. I know on the peer editing sheet, there's a spot like for the author's comments
Mhm.
where they can put it.
Yeah.
I have them put whatever they changed in that box.
Okay.
So it holds them a little bit more accountable for going back and changing something.
Okay.
Either that, or you could, and it's not super fun to read, but have them highlight their changes in red.
Okay.
It makes it not a super pretty looking paper,
Right.
but it at least shows I've gone back, I've redone these parts. And so again, it just is that extra little piece of accountability to encourage them. You still probably won't get 100% that are going back and really making meaningful edits, but it might get a few more on board.
Okay.
Do those sound like good ideas?
Yeah, I like those.
All right. And then you're done.
Then I'm done.
Yeah, we did it. We did the whole lab. So we talked a little bit about timing on the first one. In stage 2, about how long do you think that writing those procedures will take?
Depends on the group.
Yeah.
In the lab,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say 15 minutes.
Okay.
Because
Would
I am
it-
working with on-level students.
Would it be reasonable to think they could do stage 1 and 2 on the same day?
Yeah.
Okay. But is it also reasonable that might be all they do on the same day?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was kind of getting. How many days do you think for data collection are they going to need?
Usually they can get it done in one day.
Okay, that's good. And then the argumentation, and then moving into the debrief. How do you normally run those? Are they on separate days? Do you give one day for each, or
It
what
kind
does
of
that look like?
flexes.
Okay.
If we can get started on on stage 3 on day 1,
Uh-huh.
then they'll finish that and get the board done on day 2.
Okay.
But I try to put the part 5, the class
Mhm.
discussion,
Mhm.
like to start at the beginning of a new class.
Okay. Okay. So I would say let's plan for a little bit of extra time.
Okay.
So that way we're not running behind. But if we do end up with extra time at the end, then great. We can repurpose that for something we
Okay.
need. So maybe day 3, work on stage 4, and then day 4, focus on that debrief stage 5.
Yeah.
Do you give them an entire class period to write the rough draft?
Yes.
Okay. And do they have a whole class period to do the peer editing?
Mhm.
All right. And then final draft. Do they do that in class or outside of class?
Outside.
Okay. So that is homework. So taking 7 days.
1, 2, 3, 3, 4.
Whoa, you're right. I skipped a number. Whew. 5, 6. So
There we
taking
go.
6 days.
Yes.
Does that sound about right for your
Yeah.
lesson plans? Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. So just to recap, we talked about in stage 1, using the AVA strategy of numbering your paragraphs.
Yes.
Stage 2, giving them some sentence stems and taking turns writing on the paper.
Mhm.
Stage 3, you already provide them with a structure of the data table without telling them exactly what, so I think that'll help them there. Stage 4, using the post-it note feedback for the argumentation session.
Mhm.
Stage 5, incorporating philosophical chairs or Socratic seminar.
Mhm.
I know it's going to be so fun.
That'd be awesome.
Stage 6, chunking, writing the rough draft. Stage 7 is going great. And then stage 8, either changing the color or having them write down their edits.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. Do you think, what kind of impacts do you think you'll see on your students with a little bit of restructuring of some of these?
I'm hoping it'll make writing the procedure a little easier for them. Where
Okay.
they're going to be able to actually understand why they're doing something.
That's good. I like that. Understand the why. That'll help a lot because then when they go to write the essay now or the lab report, now they have a deeper understanding of that.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What other impacts do you think you'll see?
The post-it note feedback. I feel like they're going to be able to actually evaluate other people's boards rather than just stand there and feel awkward.
Good. And then how will that help later?
Same thing. They're going to understand it better. They're going to be able to write it better.
Awesome. Any other impacts you think will come from this?
Hopefully, they'll actually attempt the rough draft.
Yeah. And so that way they can get that good feedback from the peer editing.
Yeah, because one thing I'm learning from other classes is that if you can't talk it, you don't really know it.
Right.
And I need them to write it at least.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I wonder too, just something else I had thought of, because while it is valuable for them to write out the whole rough draft, sometimes that format just doesn't work for our kids. So not for this time. I think that we've done enough for this time. But just something to keep in the back of mind for your future is maybe instead of doing a whole formal lab report, using just the Avid one-pager strategy. Having that, and if you want to use it this time, you're more than welcome to. But instead of having completely written out, complete sentences, complete paragraphs, just taking that main idea, putting it in the middle, and then all those supporting details around the outside. Same information,
Yeah.
just in a more creative outlet, might be more accessible to some of your kids.
Could I give them both options?
I don't see why not.
How would that still work for peer editing?
Yeah, because they can still take that peer edit sheet and check for all those elements just in the one pager. They may not, I know that there's a section on there about mechanics.
Right.
That
Right.
probably wouldn't apply, at least not in a full sense. But absolutely, they can still check for the content that way.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool.
Okay.
Just throw that out there.
I like that.
Another idea. All right. Awesome. So whenever you're doing this lab, if you'll just let me know, because I would love, especially for the stage 5, I would love to come in here. But just to peek in and see how it's going. And then if you do have any questions or need any help along the way, just let me know. And I can help give you some feedback.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.